Today we're going to talk about characters and archetypes. So, the basics of your character we've talked about a little bit as far as mechanically speaking, and that would be your skills and your attributes. See the previous video for a more in-depth look at those. But there are some other core aspects that go into making your character, and that's what we're going to talk about today. The first one is a name. Your character has to have a name. That one's pretty simple. The next thing that your character has that really helps flesh out who they are in this world is an issue. This is something that your character has trouble dealing with. Something like a flaw, if you're familiar with other systems. This would be something that serves two functions, really. It helps inform the decisions you make. If your issue is that you're an alcoholic, this could help inform you of what you would do in a particular situation. Say, you're scavenging, but you happen to notice that there is an unopened bottle of scotch, and perhaps it distracts you and you end up splitting off from your party. Or perhaps you are scavenging through a town and you notice a liquor store. Perhaps that also informs your decision of where you would go. What this also does is it allows your GM opportunities to place these things in front of you. You know, every good RPG has that push and pull of reward and temptation. So your issue would really help your GM to take something from your character, latch on, and put an interesting challenge in front of you. Now, the other thing on the other side of this is your drive. This is what motivates you to keep going. This is what just says, you know what, I am doing this for my child. I am doing this because I have to find someone that's still out there that might be alive. This informs your decisions on the other side. This is what makes you and motivates you to keep going in this world. But drive, on the other hand, also has a mechanical benefit. Once per session, you can use this drive to get a +2 bonus on any roll. So that would be an additional 2 dice that you roll. Now, you have to be able to kind of explain why your drive is applicable here. But if you're able to do that, then once per session, you can do that. So issues are more of an RP thing, but drive, while still having that RP benefit, they also have that mechanical benefit. Every character is going to have those two things. Your character may also have an archetype. And what this does is it kind of helps shape the character that you're going to make. It acts as a starting point, a blueprint. Now, there is nothing that says you absolutely have to take any of the archetypes that are presented in the core rulebook. These aren't necessarily like classes from D&D. They're not like the options you have to make your character. And as far as actual gameplay goes, your archetype has no mechanical benefit. It is just a starting point. The book itself produces a lot of them. A lot of different options, from the criminal to the doctor to the homemaker to the kid. And these inform your decisions of how you're going to build the baseline of that character and then build upon that. Now, there's a couple things that the archetype does for you. One, it establishes your key skill and your key attribute. See the previous video for more of an in-depth explanation of what those are. But essentially, at your starting point when you're assigning out all of your stats, your key attribute and your key skill are allowed to go one higher than your starting maximum. So depending on what archetype you're going with will determine which skill or attribute you have that flexibility with. The archetype also helps inform your starting talents and your starting gear. Now, we will kind of go over those more in depth in a future video, but essentially the book presents you with a list of different talents that your character has access to. You're only able to pick so many of these, and you're able to get more as you level up, and again, we will cover all that later. But what I really want to stress in this particular video is the talents you are able to choose from are driven by your archetype. Each archetype that's presented in the book has a list of 3 talents. Of those 3, you can choose one for starting your build. Now, like I said, you don't have to pick any of the archetypes from the book. If that's the case, you need to work with your GM for just a couple things. You need to determine what your key skill is, what your key attribute is, and then your starting talent and gear. And, they should be able to make sense together working with your GM. Why does this particular group of attribute, skills, gear, and talent work together to inform the type of person, the type of character I want to represent in this world? So you have the freedom to do that. Just, as this is an RP game, as this is a storytelling game, we want to make sure those characters are cohesive and make sense. The last thing that I want to talk about is your anchor. You typically have one NPC and one PC anchor, and this represents another character in this world that your character is really close to, that feels really connected to, and they're able to use these connections in order to lower their stress levels. It's very stressful out in the world. As we know, even stress plays a way into our game with stress dice. So we need a way to alleviate that stress, to bring those stress dice numbers down, to reduce the risk that we're going to keep messing up. Your anchors, spending time with them, that is how you're able to do this. So each time that you have a character, during character creation, you're going to assign one NPC and one PC as your anchor. And these people you want to cherish, you want to take care of, because if you lose your anchor, you're losing a little part of yourself. You don't want that to happen, especially in this world. Now, there are ways to lose anchors without them dying. You could find yourselves at odds with one another, and there's always ways to make new anchors. But that will be informed throughout play, throughout how you go about telling this story, and is a huge part of actually how this game functions going through your campaign. There are additional ways to lose your drive as well. We will go over these in a later episode because it goes into some more gameplay, and this one I really just want to focus on what the foundational aspects of your character are. But there are gameplay mechanics that cause you to lose that drive. Now, it doesn't take it away from your character. It doesn't make it to where you no longer care about the person you're looking for, but you no longer can use the mechanical benefit of getting that +2. You know, you still care, but your drive for it is just lower. You're losing your energy to actually pursue it. You're losing that part of yourself that says, this is what's keeping me going. So there are ways to do that, and a part of it comes into play with not being able to manage your fear or your stress appropriately, which is why your anchors are so important. And then part of it can happen if, through combat and things like that. So that makes up the basic of your character. So just circling back around just a little bit to archetypes, I want to use one as an example. This is the politician. We have a key attribute assigned to this character of empathy, and a key skill of manipulation. The talents that you have to choose from at the start are recruiter, mind games, and right word at the right time. Now, I know that just saying these doesn't really mean anything, but if you have a copy of the basic rulebook, you can look up those talents and see what they are. Now, I would like to point out you don't actually get all 3 of the talents. You have to make a choice between the 3. Through play and leveling up, you will be able to obtain additional talents, but as far as character creation day 1 goes, you are limited to the choice of one of those 3. Another benefit of choosing an archetype from the book is that it kind of helps direct your thinking. Especially if this is your first character, it might be a nice starting point to keep you on track. It produces a list of 3 issues and 3 drives, of which you can choose between. So again, it kind of, if you're familiar with D&D 5e, it functions very similar to your background. It presents you with a list of RP characteristics that kind of line up with the background of choice. It also provides you with a list of gear. So essentially with the politician, it gives you 6 pieces of gear, and you roll 3d6. So you start with 3 pieces of gear from this particular list. And then also it gives you some examples for relationship to other characters. So if this is your first character, if it's your first campaign, it's really beneficial, I think, to choose one of the archetypes from the book. They help kind of put you on very loose rails, just kind of get you started, pointing you in the right direction, and getting you familiar with dealing with issues, with drives, and choosing talents and gear. And then going forward, if you want to break away from one of the archetypes in the book, you have the flexibility to do so. And that's about it for today. We will talk about some more of those talents, what they mean. We'll talk more about how you can go about dealing with your fear and how that might affect your drives and things in a future episode. But this one, I wanted to cover basically what makes your character apart from the stats. What is behind the stats? What takes your character and takes it from just numbers on a piece of paper to an actual character in this game. So hopefully I've been able to cover that, and we will see you next time on The Crawling Dead.